What's up, y'all? My name is Annie Linville. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. Today we're going to be going over how to perform a kettlebell swing properly so that we offload your back and so it stops contributing to some of that chronic low back pain and tightness that you might be experiencing. So there are a couple common reasons as to why the low back starts to hurt during a kettlebell swing. One of the first ones is that people often use their low back to compensate as they pull the weight up. So when they're propelling that weight up, thinking that it should be at about shoulder level, they will overuse those low back muscles and kind of clench and tuck the glutes under, really overworking those lumbar extensors. So you're getting a lot of tightness in through the back, when in reality, this motion should be ending at about this almost like a plank position where your ribs are stacked over your hips. So we need to practice the movement pattern where we're allowing, after that hinge-based movement, we drive those hips forward, keep those ribs stacked at that standing position, even with the weight in our hand here. So that's gonna be reason number one. Number two is gonna be that a lot of people don't know how to hip hinge properly. So when we go into a hip hinge, what should happen is we send those hips back, our back stays flat, our glutes and our hamstrings lengthen. We find length through the sit bones as that weight is going through our legs. And then we drive through our legs, so we drive with that momentum up so that that weight lands again at about shoulder level. And then we control that weight going back down by again lengthening through here. And so it ends up being more of a dynamic hinge. What a lot of people don't know is they don't know how to hinge. So when they do a hip hinge here, they'll feel their back already very tight. So they don't know how to perform it by lengthening and opening through the glutes. And they end up just really feeling their back in a hip hinge period. So we need to learn how to do a proper hip hinge. The second part to this is that a lot of people, if they don't know how to hinge, then they end up squatting the swing. So they'll end up really more squatting down to the floor, and from that position they come up and they're way more likely to be using the lower back to kind of pull that weight up here as they try to drive through those hips. So it ends up being more of a squatted swing rather than a hinge swing. So let's take a look about how to hip hinge and how you can practice this at home. All right, if you have a foam roller, this can be a really helpful tool in learning how to hinge. So you're gonna place that foam roller along your thighs and have your pinkies just kind of alongside it, holding it and pressing it down, your palms facing inwards. Your feet are gonna be about hip distance apart, and you're making sure that you're keeping those big toes down versus just going to the outsides of your feet. From here, you're gonna think about sending the hips back as you roll the foam roller down your thighs. So as you can see, the way that I'm going down by rolling the foam roller, I'm lengthening through my glutes. I'm not arching through my back, and I'm not just skipping the glutes and going straight to the hamstrings till I feel a tension there. We're thinking about lengthening. The length that's happening here is what's allowing me to go into that hinge. So as I hold this position here, I'm thinking big toes down. I'm gonna think about spreading my sit bones. So you can almost try to pull your knees together just a little bit, almost like pretend to pull your knees together. And you're gonna feel how that spreads our sit bones here. You're gonna hold this position and find the glutes lengthening. This is key because again, if you just skip over it to the point where you feel tension in the hamstrings, you're missing a huge part of the support during the hip hinge, which is the glutes. So we inhale as we lengthen and expand through those glutes. My back is staying flat. And then I press through the floor to come up to stand to a standing position. This foam roller is not gonna allow you to lean back. So you're thinking about standing tall, rib stack. So just getting these reps in allows you to really feel what that hinge should be like, so that you can really hone in on the form before we add a weight and before we add the complexity of the dynamic speed that can make a kettlebell swing what it is. All right, so now that you've mastered the hip hinge, then I want you to practice just a couple drills where you practice it without a weight. So as you go down, you wanna think about almost swinging that weight between your knees. You wanna think about it as staying if this is a triangle at your knees and all the way up to the pubic bone, you're trying to aim the weight above those knees. You're really not trying to go below those knees. So then you practice it, you're gonna hinge just like we practiced with the foam roller. Weight goes above the knees, feel those glutes lengthening. Then you're gonna press your feet into the floor to drive that weight up so that it lands at about shoulder level. And from here, you want to think about stacking shoulders over your pelvis. You're not thinking about, if your rib cage feels like it's behind your tailbone, you're going to be using your lower back. So you want to think about making those hips lengthen and drive, but just to the point that it's landing at that, almost like I said, plank position. So we're inhaling, exhale, land. Control the descent. Inhale, exhale. Keeping those big toes planted, because if we just go to the outsides of the feet, we're going to be really shortening in through those glutes. And when we keep the big toes down, that helps our pelvis find what's called internal rotation. It allows us to find that lengthening happening. So make sure those big toes are staying down and then driving it back up. So now that we've practiced those drills, now let's practice with a weight. Okay, so now we're going to practice adding a weight to that, and I'm going to be cueing you through the swings so that you can practice some of the cues that we talked about. This is a 25-pound weight. You can go lighter if you need to. You can go heavier if you need it. You need to have something that allows you to keep the form that we talked about. It's not too much weight that makes you have to compensate, but knowing that with a kettlebell swing, you also need a little bit of weight to gain some momentum. It can't be too light. So just pick something that's appropriate for you. You're going to start with the weight on the ground. You're going to find that hinge position. So remember, feet a little, like about hip distance apart. Weight is going to be out in front, and you kind of tip it to the side and have that good grip on the bar there. You're going to initiate the swing with an inhale as you hike it back above those knees. Exhale as you drive the weight to about shoulder level. Inhale as it comes down. We're spreading through the glutes and the sit bones, keeping the weight above the knees. Exhale as we drive the weight to about shoulder level, keeping our ribs stacked over our pelvis. And then we put it back down safely so that we don't just awkwardly drop it. Okay, so we're always picking it and putting it back down in that same position as we started. So as we work on this, avoiding overusing our low back, you're thinking of learning the hip hinge, practicing keeping the ribs over the pelvis in that top of the swing, and then you learn to control the momentum of the weight with both of those movement patterns. I hope this is helpful. Drop any questions or comments down below.